Hi, everyone. I'd like to welcome you here today to our meeting. I'm Lori Thiel, Vice President of the League of Women Voters. Thank you for joining us. I'm particularly proud today to stand before you and welcome you to this event because March is Women's History Month. And I'm really happy that we're all here gathered together for this topic. And also, we get an opportunity to take a minute to just remember the opportunities and the benefits that we all have enjoyed because women ahead of us have done some good work and helped establish rights that we all take advantage of today. And with that, I want to go ahead and get started with this presentation and the topic today. I'm going to introduce today's moderator, Beryl Flom. Beryl epitomizes what we're here today to do, including the theme of History Month. So the theme for Women's History Month this year is Women Educating and Inspiring Generations. And it's designed to highlight the powerful influence of women who have dedicated their lives to education, mentorship, and leadership. And Beryl epitomizes all of those characteristics. She has been a member of the League of Women Voters for over 50 years. And she's been a very active member of our organization and other organizations. I know she does work with our church, and she's been an immigrant rights participant for years and years and years. And she's also a powerful political advocate. She was instrumental in getting Measure B on the ballot this last election season. So Beryl's just a force, and she is a perfect representative for the League and for Women's History Month. So with that, Beryl, the mic is yours.
Good morning. I chair the Immigration and Deportation Committee for the League of Women Voters. We meet on the second Thursday at 9 in the morning on Zoom. So if anybody wants to sign up to get the notes or attend those meetings, we'd love to have you. We're going to take written questions today. I think you have cards, and the cards get turned into the table over there on your left. And there are pages who will pick up the cards for you. So you can write questions at any point in the program, feel free. We screen them a little bit so that there's no duplication and that sort of thing. But, we're not being very picky. And now I'm going to introduce Ian Seruelo, who is our speaker today. He's an attorney. And he practices in labor, employment, and immigration law. His immigration practice is primarily in the fields of removal, defense, and humanitarian immigration relief. He finished his college degree from the University of the Philippines and his law degree from the Thomas Jefferson School of Law. Ian's currently the president of the San Diego chapter of Asian Pacific American Labor Alliance, which is part of AFL-CIO. He's also the chairperson of the San Diego Immigrant Rights Consortium, a coalition of more than 50 organizations in San Diego that advocates for and defends the civil and human rights of immigrants and refugees. Mr. Seruelo has a long experience of activism and community organizing in the Philippines and the US. He's had a passion for social and economic justice and has been deeply involved in various campaigns and movements that advance the interests of the marginalized. As an attorney, Mr. Seruelo extends his advocacy for immigrant communities and the working sector. He assists and provides pro bono legal services to different nonprofits and community organizations in providing services to different minority communities. And right now, he's busy doing presentations. So we're so glad to have you, Ian, and please come up and do your presentation.
Thank you so much, Beryl. So good morning, everyone. So my name is Ian Seruelo. So I was, born in the Philippines, raised in the Philippines. I moved here in 2005, and So always been doing this kind of work, trying to help underrepresented communities, especially working communities and immigrant communities. So I am an immigrant myself. That's why I'm very, very passionate in this field. I've been doing removal defense for around 10 years now. I am always, my schedule is always full of court appearances here in Immigration Court in San Diego, as well as in Otay Mesa Detention Center, and immigration courts are all over the country as well. And I assist people from applying for some kind of relief, especially for those who are arriving at our southern border. I represent many of them from countries all over the world. And so today I'm going to present Know Your Rights presentation and workshop, but at the same time, I understand that we're supposed to have another speaker who will, who's supposed to provide at least some context or some background as to the issues that we are facing right now. So I'm going to, cover that as well. And before I go direct to the topic that we have here in the slides. So let me start with some initial information and some facts relating to what we are facing now as a nation, and we've been through this, right? We've been to 4 years under this administration, and I know we are facing very hard times, and I think with the work of the different organizations, including the League of Women Voters and all the other organizations here in San Diego and California, I think we will be able to overcome, and we will be able to come out of this stronger. And so I'm using the slides of We Are California, which is prepared by Alliance San Diego. So these are very important information here that I think will provide some context in what we will discuss today. So California now has 10.6 million immigrants, so more than any other state. So 1 in every 4 Californians is an immigrant. So nearly half of all California children have an immigrant parent. So especially we are a border community, and we have the most number of mixed status families here in our region. So new California immigrants come from all over the world. If you see there in the pie graph, so the largest group comes from Asia, and the second largest from Latin America and the Caribbean. Okay, so the purple there is Asia, which is 45%. Latin America and Caribbean is 36%. So we are very diverse here in California, and 55% of those are naturalized citizens. Okay, and are 5.8 million, and 28% have legal residency. They are permanent residents in the U.S. And then we have the 17% who are undocumented, or around 1.8 million. Okay, and I hope the slides are clear. But anyway, the majority of the 1.8 million undocumented Californians have lived in the state for more than a decade. So they have been living here for a long time. They have established their roots, their community. They are our neighbors, friends, the co-workers, family members. They are practically, they are part of us. They are us. And in California, undocumented immigrants contributed $8.5 billion in state and local taxes in 2022. And this includes income taxes, sales, and property taxes. So, we always hear that narrative about, immigrants as just taking resources from our country, from our state. But that's not true because immigrants contribute a lot to our economy. And another thing is that immigrants, we all know that, we contribute to the culture and the community in California. We come from different areas around the world, and we bring with us our culture, our food, our language, all the things that makes California diverse and colorful and a rich state. And we are faced with a broken immigration system. So it is even before this administration, the immigration system is already broken, and we know that, and we see that in our communities. We see that there are a lot of broken families. There are a lot of members of our communities who has been waiting for like 10 years, 15 years, 20 years to be able to have their family members join them. But our immigration system is not that responsive to the needs of the state, of the country. So the entries in our immigration system, entries are limited to immediate family of US citizens or permanent residents. And then we have the skilled workers petitioned by US company, and the humanitarian visas or options, which are asylum, refugees, and also the T visa for victims of trafficking, the U visas for victims of crime. But the numbers, though, are under our law, under Immigration Nationality Act, we put a lot of limits in all of these numbers, and these numbers has not been moved for over a decade now, and that's why again the line is very long, and of course there's an end here. And one thing that's important to show is that, of course, if you have money, if you're a millionaire, you can get your own visa. We have a certain visa for investors, right? If you have extra $1 million in your bank account, you may be able to get a visa as well. And long wait, yes, that is what characterized our immigration system. I've been an immigration attorney for 10 years, and we have clients who have been waiting for 10 years more for a visa to be available for them to be able to join their families. So we have this limit, okay, the 7% per country, which creates long lines for countries like Mexico, China, the Philippines, and India, because of these limits in the numbers. And contrary to what others say, just follow the law and just do the legal process and then get into a line. But the very problem of that argument is that many times there's no such thing as a line, okay? And the other lines will take you 20 years to be able to get here. So, and especially for those who are already aging, the lines that are being provided does not really make sense. So, and on top of the broken immigration system is the harsh enforcement of this broken system, okay, which is being made worse by this current administration. So, on the average, every day, the United States detains thousands and deports 900 people a day. So here are, the bar graph shows the sample years, 2008 under the Bush administration, 2012 under Obama, 2016 under Obama, and then 2020 under Trump, and again, and also the recent one under President Biden. So, so we detain a lot of migrants who are, especially right now, those who are crossing the southern border. We detain a big part of that, and those that benefit from this system is actually the corporations like GEO that run our detention centers. So I think, we all know that most of our detention centers are actually run by private entities, by for-profit entities. So in 2022, GEO earned 1 billion in contracts with ICE. Hold on. So, and then in 2024, GEO gave 1 million to the Trump campaign. And, the stocks of this corporation have been increasing, especially since President Trump won the election. And we all know the impact of this kind of policies, which is focused more on, detaining our brothers and sisters who are undocumented. So this results to separation of families, people not going to work, traumatizing the community, instilling fear in our community. It really doesn't solve a broken system. So I represent many of people who are in removal proceedings and others who are not in removal proceedings, but they are undocumented and they have consulted with me as to their options. What is common among them is the fear. I receive, my phone doesn't stop, receiving texts and calls from people who are saying, how will this impact me and our family? What do I have to do, to protect myself and my family? And every single change in a policy that's declared, we know that for almost 2 months now, we've been receiving this barrage of executive orders and new policies coming out of the White House, and it's causing this much fear among the immigrant and refugee population. So we have been receiving news about even U.S. citizens are arrested and detained, and even permanent residents are arrested and detained, and resulting to the fear, increasing fear in our communities. So, just a short harm. We know that the history of the immigration system, immigration laws in the U.S. is based on, exclusion, based on sometimes, or most of the time, based on racial exclusion. We are aware of the Chinese Exclusion Act. We are aware of the Asiatic laws, which barred Asian people from moving into the U.S., living in the U.S. We are aware of, other legislation that, resulted to an exclusion of, a whole set of people. And, the history of our Border Patrol is also, founded in, in a racist history, which, they started as black slave catchers in the 1800s, and they also rounded up, Japanese members of our communities who are Japanese in internment camps in the 1900s, as during the World War II. So, and the Border Patrols also killed hundreds of Mexicans in 2000, and they engage in racial profiling every day. So, this is what is one of the most common reason that my clients would tell me. Like when I ask them, why were you stopped? They will say, I don't know. They will say, maybe I look like a Mexican, And and indeed, it's happening, There's no other reason why, these people are stopped by ICE and immigration agents because, they simply look like Latinos or Mexicans. And the other issue that we face, and that which we have been very active in engaging our leaders is the issue of accountability. You know, in the last century, not a single federal agent has been held accountable for killing immigrants, like Anastasia Hernandez Rojas, a longtime resident in San Diego, whose family fights for justice. So the one in the photo is his wife, who has been fighting for justice for the death of Anastasia. And I've seen this cruelty happen a lot of times. I'm a volunteer at the border, providing humanitarian assistance to people arriving at our southern border. We've been doing this for over a year now at the border, and we have seen how Border Patrol treats these migrants, especially those who are not able to understand their instructions because they don't speak either English or Spanish. Most of the Border Patrol agents speaks only English and Spanish. And if an immigrant comes from a country that doesn't speak Spanish or English, they were subjected. I've seen it happening many times to such kind of verbal abuse and cruel treatment. But again, on top of that are the hundreds of deaths that has been happening in our southern border, and until now there's no one has been held accountable for the abuses by our border and ICE officers. So our immigration agents have very, very broad powers. So the Customs and Border Protection and ICE have powers that other agencies do not have. They can roam anywhere in California to question, search, detain, and arrest people, and they can racially profile. So this is the budget for CBP and ICE has tripled over the last 2 decades. And in 2024, it was close to 30 billion. So the blue one there is the ICE budget that that you can see increase multiple times from 2003 to 2024. The green is the CBP budget. And Border Patrol is part of CBP, okay, Customs and Border Protection. And it is the largest law enforcement agency in the country with 20,000 agents. So those that is shown in the map are different Border Patrol sectors that are present all over the U.S. And they usually wear green uniforms with yellow badges and drive white and green vehicles with a sector code on the back, so which is encircled there in the photo. And ICE is a much smaller force. It has 6,000 agents, and they wear blue shirts with dark pants and drive white and blue cars or unmarked cars. So these are the vehicles that we see now doing the mass deportation, implementing the mass deportation policy of the current administration. Sometimes, other federal agents from Department of Homeland Security, they work with the ICE and CBP. This includes Coast Guard, the DEA, ATF, TSA, and the U.S. Marshals. They join the immigration agents in enforcing immigration laws. And of course, the issue of immigrant detention and surveillance. So the U.S., we have about 40,000 detention beds. Right now, it's in capacity because of the implementation of the current policies. So, and they are now increasing capacity because the Trump administration wants to detain more people. So they here in Otay Mesa, they have a soft-sided facility that could accommodate even more than the capacity of the Otay Mesa Detention Center. So over 90%, as I mentioned earlier, they are run by for-profit corporations like GEO. And the average cost to detain someone is around $250 to $500 a day, depending on location. So, so here in California, we have 5 detention facilities. The one in Adelanto, Bakersfield, Calexico, McFarland, and here in San Diego, the Otay Mesa Detention Center. So they also use smaller holding facilities throughout California, and also here in San Diego, that's the soft-sided facility. So in addition to the 40,000 detention centers, ICE monitors hundreds of thousands more through the use of bracelets, these ankle bracelets that you see, and also through this phone app that they install on the cell phones of immigrants or asylum seekers. And in 2024, the total budget for all of it was 3.4 billion. So what has changed? Okay, since January 20, not much has changed actually. I mean, in terms of the powers that they have, it's still the same. The CBP and ICE are still the same. There's no change in the law. But of course, the change is really on the focus of this current administration and the continued demonization of immigrants and refugees and people of color, right? So Trump wants to detain and deport more people, and definitely he needs more resources, and he, gutted the asylum process. He shut down asylum. He suspended the refugee program and continues to spread hate. So, that's one of the problems right now in the southern border, because we have now tens and even hundreds of thousands waiting, supposedly, to enter the U.S. to pursue their claim for asylum. Yet, the entry of the new administration put an end to even the small numbers that have been accepted under the Biden administration. So refugees, the refugee program that Trump suspended has primarily helped people from black and brown countries. So these are, the top 10 countries of origin of asylum in 2023. So we have the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is the top there, and Myanmar, Syria, Afghanistan, Ukraine. So, with the stopping of the refugee program, definitely it results to our country's denial of relief to those who are actually already been approved beforehand as refugees for resettlement in the U.S. So while suspending refugee for others, well, Trump also opened up refugee resettlement to white Afrikaners, the architects of apartheid in South Africa. So we always see that double standard, right? Like if the migrants are white, they are easily able to enter the U.S. Yet if they are brown and black people, it's always hard. One specific example that I saw is that during the height of the start of the war in Ukraine, we saw thousands of Ukrainians at the border, right? In a matter of 2-3 weeks, our country was able to actually allow them to enter in a very orderly process, right? But when it's black and brown people who are presenting themselves at the border, we are faced with a lot of hurdles. We are faced with a lot of hateful rhetoric that these are criminals, that these are terrorists, right? So, so nothing new there when it comes to how Trump views people of color. And deportation rates are still the same. This slide shows you that, and the current administration simply wants to show or make it appear like he's deporting more people than the previous administration. Maybe it's a little higher, but it's not really considerably higher. But what is heightened is the fear in the community, which I think is the very intent of these policies, right? We know that for Trump to be able to deport 11 million, 12 million undocumented, he will need a lot of resources to do that. And it's almost impossible for him to do that, because it will cost billions and billions of dollars of funding for him to be able to even double the deportation numbers under his administration. So again, he's trying to use this old law, the law, the Alien and Animist Act, to be able to deport more people and deprive more people from a due process, and just remove everyone, and that is scary, and even try increasing the fear in our community. And of course, the current administration also wants to increase detention capacity. And this quote here is that we are showing is from a CEO of Core Civic, one of the biggest detention owners of detention facilities here in the U.S. And he said that he has worked at Core Civic for 32 years, and they are very excited of this new development, right? It's again, it's so egregious that in our country, a company, a corporation is actually enriching themselves, from at the expense or from the suffering of other people. And agents are under this new administration, the new policy. They are allowing immigration agents to approach schools, churches, hospitals, but again, they rarely do because of the limited funding. But under this administration, we are sure that, and with the support of Congress, we are sure that they are trying to get more funding to be able to increase enforcement activities. The good thing is that to enter schools, churches, and hospitals, and private locations, they still have to get the judicial warrant. Okay, and many presidents, including Biden and Obama, have used the military to support the border patrol. But this current administration, though, has a different plan. Even more, even intends to use the military in enforcement of immigration law. But again, there's this old law called the Deportation Comitatus Act that prevents the military from being used for civilian law enforcement. But again, we can't really predict under this administration. We have seen that even things that are blatantly unconstitutional, like, for example, the ending of birthright citizenship, they're still trying to enforce an illegal, unconstitutional executive order. So one good thing that we have here in California is that we have sanctuary laws. We have the SB 54, we have AB 21, we have we have these laws that prevents our local law enforcement to be used in enforcement activities. Under California law, our local sheriff's department couldn't enter into an agreement with ICE to deputize the local law enforcement to be an arm of immigration. Okay, and in addition, here in San Diego, the county passed a resolution on December 10 that prohibits the use of county resources to assist in enforcing immigration law. Although the Sheriff Martinez made a declaration that she wouldn't abide by such resolution, but we will make sure that they will follow the state law and will follow the state policy, the county policy of ensuring that local resources are not used to enforce immigration laws. And call to action, okay? We are faced with all of these issues that affects our communities. We will continue to resist, we will continue to fight. We demand policies that respect the dignity and protect human rights. We will call to expand the legal pathways to immigrate and pathways to become a U.S. citizen. And we would continue call for a stop in the funding of harsh enforcement. So I just want to also give what I think are the impacts of the current policy of this administration, right? So aside from what I was saying earlier about the impact in our communities, the fear, children not going to school, parents not going to their work for fear of being apprehended. On top of that, of course, is the impact on our economy, right? We know that the California economy is, one of our, main industry is agriculture, and we know that in agriculture there are a lot of immigrant workers who are employed in that section of our economy. And not only in agriculture, but even in the service sector, for example. We have many of our brothers and sisters, both undocumented and undocumented, who work in the service industry. And, that is also affected. And, overall, our economy is affected because of this policy that are being implemented by the current administration. So both at the family level and both at the macro level, we are affected by this continuous attack on the rights and the civil rights of human beings. And this is only the second month, right? Am I right? We still have 46 months to go. And so, but we've been bracing for this. We know it's going to be very hard, but I think one of the ways that we could brace for the impact of these policies is to make sure that our communities are aware of their rights, right? We want to continue providing this education to our communities, to different organizations, and try to echo these workshops to ensure that we empower members of our community. Because what I have seen is that when people come to me and ask, what can I do, especially those who belong to a mixed status family with family members who are undocumented, they were, the fear that they have at first when they come to me, once they are aware of their rights, once they are aware that they are actually, able to do something to defend themselves and their family, you see that kind of empowerment, you see that big change and how they face the current administration. So you see, I feel that every time I make this presentation, which the Know Your Rights part of this presentation I will cover in a bit. But what I want to say is that I've seen the importance of educating our community because of we as advocates couldn't do everything on our own. We need these people to enforce and invoke their own rights. We cannot invoke the rights for them. It's only for them to understand their rights and invoke it themselves. That's the only way to push back as a community, right? So and that is what I want to continue with right now, except if there's any questions. Okay, so I'm going to run through the basic rights that we have, with the hope that we are able to communicate this further to your own networks and your own families and communities, right? So the first question I always ask in this kind of presentation is, who has rights in this country, right? Is it only U.S. citizens? Is it only those who are legal permanent residents, or how about the undocumented members of our community? Do they have rights as well? So, of course, you know, the answer to that is every person within the U.S. has certain basic rights, regardless of immigration status, right? We know that under the Constitution, it doesn't, you know, limit the rights to those who are U.S. citizens or permanent residents. We all have rights, including everyone who are undocumented, okay? And what rights do we have, okay? So these are the three rights in order of how we invoke them, okay? So these are the three main rights that is relevant to our topic today. The first here is the Fifth Amendment right, the right to remain silent and the right to due process of law. And the right to refuse to sign documents, the right to give documents. That's the first right that you invoke. The second right that is very important here is the Fourth Amendment right. So it's the right against unreasonable searches and seizures. So, you know, ICE and law enforcement cannot enter a person's home or search a person's belongings without permission, you know, except if they have a warrant. Okay, we will discuss more of this later on, but you know, there's a note there. Most of the time, they don't have this judicial warrant, and so unless we give them permission, we can invoke our Fourth Amendment right against unreasonable searches and seizures. And the third right that is very important here is the Sixth Amendment right. So we have a right to legal counsel. So here it says on criminal, but not immigration. But let me explain that a bit, because I think that's where there's a lot of misconception. Okay. So in criminal proceedings, we know that even if you don't have an attorney will be provided to you by the state, okay, by the government at no expense to you, right? We have the public defender. But in immigration, there's no public defender, okay? But you still have that right to counsel, but only at your own expense, okay? So those are the two important information, because others think that they don't have a right of an attorney in immigration proceedings. They do have a right, but you have to spend for it. And then we have a right to be advised on the immigration consequences in a criminal proceedings. So many of our non-citizen brothers and sisters who, let's say are convicted of certain crimes, even minor crimes, there are some minor crimes that would have very negative consequences when it comes to immigration. And and we have a right to be advised on the impact of such conviction or such a plea agreement to your immigration status. So those are very important rights as well. So, the question here is, why do we remain silent? Okay. The important information there is that the main reason that it's important to remain silent is because if ICE has no information about where you're from, or or your country of origin, then they can't deport you to a country that they don't know, right? They are not able to deport you if they don't have a proof that you are a citizen or not, or if you are born in a specific country. So if there's no information as to where you're from, or if you are a citizen or not, they can't really deport you. So that's one important fact there. And the key to assert your Fifth Amendment right before immigration agents is this statement: I assert my right to remain silent, right? We are very familiar with that. But that is what we teach our members of our community, especially non-English speakers, right? To practice the phrase, I assert my right to remain silent. Where are you from? I assert my right to remain silent. Where were you born? I assert my right to remain silent. Okay? So the goal definitely is to avoid arrest. Okay? But even if, later on I will also explain that even if ICE arrest you, you can still assert these rights, okay? And because this may be important, especially if you are placed in deportation proceedings, okay? And so before you are arrested, silence is golden. So it's very important, okay? You can probably say, your name, but the important thing is really, that you don't admit to your country of origin. Except, there are some exceptions, of course. So now, here is, if you are arrested, okay? If arrested, okay? So these are the do's and don'ts if you are arrested, okay? So the initial point there is if ICE already has a record of your country of origin, because sometimes, for example, that you were already deported before, or you already were under some form of proceedings before, and ICE already have information about your country of origin. So one important thing to do is to tell ICE if you fear return to your home country, then you have to articulate that to the immigration agent. And you should respond honestly to questions about your name, address, and date of birth. But otherwise, if they don't have any information yet about your country of origin, then you don't have to say anything, okay? You should assert your right to remain silent. And do not resist arrest, do not run. That will make it even more difficult to defend you in immigration court if you run. Do not lie, do not sign anything or make any decisions without an attorney. Do not answer questions about your immigration status. And again, in deportation proceedings, you have a right to see a judge, okay? And that's one thing, again, that I think is very important to our community, because I have seen many who come to me, the family member comes to me and said, they will consult with me with a family member who's now in Mexico or is now deported, and they said, well, they just signed the voluntary departure because they think they really don't have a right or they don't have any choice. But again, the problem is that after reviewing their immigration history, I actually was able to determine that they are actually eligible for some form of relief. But if they are not aware of that, they will just say, I'll just sign voluntary departure. Okay, so it's really important that we educate our community members that, see an attorney and insist on seeing a judge if you are arrested. And you have a right to an attorney, although there's no public defender, and you also have a right to have an interpreter in court. And so what documents to carry, okay? So the first item is red cards. I think you were provided with these red cards right at the door. These are from the ILRC, the Immigrant Legal Resource Center, that produced these cards. And these cards reminds a person of their right, and at the same time, one side of it, invokes your right to those three rights that we mentioned earlier. And but I will show you what is in the red card in the next slide. But so it's also important to carry, your state and local forms of identification. Okay, if you have, a California ID, and copies or original documents of your immigration documents showing lawful status. If you have TPS, if you have a green card, if you are a student, if you have a student visa, it's important to have that with you. And of course, it's important to have, the contact information of your attorney, okay, if you have one. And what we ask for people not to carry is that any IDs that you have from your own country. Okay, why? Of course, if you have a consular ID from Mexico, they will know that you are from Mexico, right? So they know where to deport you if you are carrying an ID from Honduras, from Mexico, or from your country of origin. So don't bring we ask our community members not to bring an ID from their home country, okay? And also another thing that you need to carry that's not here actually is it's important to bring documents that show that you have been in the US for more than 2 years. Because, under immigration law, if you have lived in the US for more than 2 years, then you are not subject to what we call expedited removal. Okay? If you lived here for less than 2 years, ICE or CBP can actually subject you to expedited removal, and you are not able to see an immigration judge through an expedited removal. So if you have lived here for more than 2 years, we advise that you bring some documents that shows that you have actually lived here. Like, for example, a copy of your lease agreement, or a pay stub that you work in X, Y, and Z, right? So anything that would show that you have lived in the U.S. For more than 2 years is very important. And this is I'm just showing here in this slide like what is in the red card, right? So one side of the red card, reminds you that you have to exercise your rights, and that could be in any language. So if you can see, the red cards, one side comes in different languages, and the other side is always in English. The one that comes in any language is simply reminding you that, it says there, you have the constitutional rights to do the following, do not open the door, do not answer any questions, do not say anything, do not sign anything, and give this card to the agent. So it's giving instruction to our community member to give this card to the person or to the ICE, to the immigration agent. The other side of the card is saying there, it's always in English, because that is what you will present to the immigration agent. It says there, I do not wish to speak with you, answer your questions, or sign or hand you any document. And I want to invoke my right, under the Fifth Amendment. So again, the card doesn't have to be in red, okay? You can actually use any color paper, and, and then you can write this down and have it with you, okay? So the color of the card is not, important there. So what is important is you know how to use it, right? So one side is the one that you will present to the immigration agent, especially if they come knocking on your door, right? So if they knock on your door, you don't open the door, you can slide the red card under the door, or a paper under the door that contains this information, that you are invoking your right to remain silent, that you are not going to open the door unless they have a judicial warrant signed by a judge, right? So also, even if you are, stopped while walking, in a street, or when you're driving and you are asked additional questions by the officer, you can show this card. And here, I started discussing this. If ICE comes to your home, you assert your right to remain silent. Slide the red card under the door, state clearly that you are asserting your right to remain silent. If they force themselves inside your house, then you always have to still continue saying, you don't resist, you don't, resort to violence. Of course, that will only put you in a deeper problem. Let them do their work, even if they are violating the Constitution, your constitutional right, but try to document everything, and keep on asserting that you are not giving permission for them to enter your house and search your house, right? And if any of your family members could document what's happening, especially if you have a family member who's a U.S. citizen, then or if you can do it safely, then you can just record the incident as well. So what if you encounter ICE in the community, like you are walking, driving, and in other public spaces, the same thing. You exercise those rights. You start with the Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. You do not sign anything. You remain calm. Do not consent to a search of your person or your property, or if you have a bag, if you agree or if you permit them to search your bag, then they will. But if you don't, you don't have to agree to them searching your property or your car. So even if you have a status, actually, even if you are a U.S. citizen, it's actually also okay to enforce, your right. You don't have to submit to any kind of search, even if you have a status. So both undocumented and people who are U.S. citizens or with legal status can invoke this right. Of course, if you're driving, you have to show your driver's license. If it's the local sheriff's department who's stopping you, then definitely they may also require you to show a driver's license and insurance if you commit a traffic violation. Okay. Again, do not run, do not speed away, do not provide false documents. So what if ICE comes to your work? Okay, so there's two ways, right? Either you are a business owner or you are an employee. Okay. If you are a business owner, it's important that in the areas where it's not accessible to the public, you put a sign private, just like in the example. If you have a restaurant, for example, those areas that are not accessible to the public, you label them private, so that you could assert your right when ICE comes to your business, right? So in public areas or in areas of your business that is accessible to the public, ICE and immigration agents can access those areas. But again, even employees in those areas can invoke their right to remain silent. So in private areas, they will need a judicial warrant to enter and search the private areas. So it's important, if you're a business owner, to also talk to your employees and educate your employees as to what they will do in times of a raid by immigration agents, right? So you can train staff to always say, that you are not allowed to enter, that I don't want to speak with you. You can speak to the owner, to Mr. X, Y, or Z. So yeah, for I-9 audits, this is even a long discussion, but the general thing is that employers have a right to prevent ICE from questioning their employees or accessing private areas, and they have a right to ask for a warrant, especially if they want to access, your records or private areas of your business. If you are an employee, then again, the same thing. If you notice, it's always asserting your right to remain silent. You do not sign anything. You remain calm, and do not consent to a search of your person, or your property. And then there's you do not get into a line, because usually what happens in an enforcement raid in an employment setting is that employees will tend to form a line in front of the officers. And what they will do usually, if you form a line in front of them, they will ask questions. They will ask each person a question. So, it's better not to form that line. You ask your employees not to form a line if ICE arrives in the business. They should continue their work, okay? And of course, ask to speak to an attorney. It's always important to get correct information from a legal service provider. Now let's go to how to know what a judicial warrant is and what an immigration warrant is. Because now this is the key now, because that's always the question of the community, right? How would you know that the warrant is a correct warrant? How would you know that it's actually not a valid warrant? So these are, the two different kinds of warrant that we are showing here is the judicial warrant, which is the correct form of warrant, and the immigration warrant. The immigration warrant is simply a document that was prepared by DHS or ICE to arrest somebody who is an undocumented person or somebody who is not a citizen, right? For a warrant to be valid, it should be issued by a court, a judicial court. It should be signed by a judge. It should state the exact address of the person, of the relevant person, And it should be executed within a time period. There should be a time period there. So I will show you an example. So this is an example of a judicial warrant. So if you see here on top, it says United States District Court. So it's a court. It's not Department of Homeland Security, right? And usually, here at the bottom, there's a judge's name and a judge's signature, okay? And I have another slide. So here is a sample of the immigration warrant that usually ICE will have. It's only Department of Homeland Security, and it says here, warrant for arrest of alien. And usually this word alien, if you see the word alien in a document, usually it's an immigration warrant. It's not a judicial warrant. So in the next slide here, we will show you the comparison, right? So in the one side is that the one with the district court. That's the correct warrant. So you have to ask a question if it has your correct address, right? And also, it's still current. There's a date that you have to check if the warrant is still current. And also, every judicial warrant, it specifies who the person they're looking for or the specific property that they are, that they can do a search to. So they cannot, if it's a whole apartment building, if they only have a search warrant for one unit, they cannot search the whole building, right? Under that warrant. They can only legally search one unit of the building, if that is what is in the warrant. So the warrant, usually the judicial warrant, is very specific. And lastly, it's important that it's actually signed by a judge. So even if the document is from a district court, even if there is a specific address, even if the date is still current, but if it's not signed by a judge, it's not a valid warrant. So any one of these these requirements are missing, it's not a valid warrant. So it's really key in making sure that our communities understand what a valid warrant is, because 99.9% of the time, ICE don't have a warrant. Okay, but the reason for that is because it will take time for them to apply for a judicial warrant. So if they are trying to deport as many people as they can, they won't have time to apply for a warrant for every single person. So 99% of the time, they don't have a warrant. And it has been very effective, not only here in San Diego, in the reports that we have from our communities, that once they refuse to open the door, ICE they can't do anything else but to leave. But what we also learn is that they will always lie. They will always say, yes, we have a warrant. They will always say that they have a warrant. But what they always have is the immigration warrant. So if the community members say, this is not a valid warrant, it is a warrant by DHS, not by a judge. So that ICE official will know that, hey, this person who is living here understands his or her rights, and they better leave. So that has happened in many of the communities that we have presented, this information to. So, what if ICE comes to a jail? Again, so here, if let's say, for example, a family member was arrested for a local offense and he is in detention, under California law, I mentioned this earlier, the SB 54 law, it's illegal for the local law enforcement to transfer you to ICE, okay? It's legal for local law enforcement to allow ICE to enter the facility and interview your family member who is detained. That's illegal, okay? That's against a state law. It's only if your family member who is detained agrees to be interviewed by ICE where they are allowed to interview our family member. So we always tell our community members, you should always decline. You should not allow yourself to be interviewed by ICE at all. Okay. Um, of course, courthouse arrest. I haven't seen this happening yet, but again, this is specific to depending on what case. So that could be they should consult their attorney if a family member or somebody is going to court, and if they are undocumented. Witnessing ICE activity, can I record? So we have the First Amendment right to record law enforcement activity in public view. So I think this is one of the things that we as, let's say, the U.S. citizen members of our community, this is one role that they could play because they can actually record the incident safely, and they don't have, there will not be any significant retaliation against them since they are already U.S. citizens. The key is always not to interfere. Even if you're undocumented, if you are able to record the incident from a safe distance, it's still okay. Okay, but of course, it's possible that they will ask questions and they will try to intimidate you if you are recording the incident, right? But what is important for our allies is to, if you are able to do it safely, you record the incident. And what you can do now, the first thing that we actually tell our community members is to have a family preparedness plan. Talk among your family members who what will happen if I am arrested, what happens if one is deported, who will take care of the children, what is our plan of action if one is arrested, right? So it should be something that should be talked about in a family, and who will take care of the medical needs, of who will have access to the bank account, who will feed our pets, who will, those things should be discussed among family members, and to make sure that all important documents are also gathered in one place. Immigration history, civil documents, birth certificate, marriage certificate, and all. And lastly, here is immigration screening. I said earlier that it's very important this is the correct time to have our members of our community who are undocumented consult an attorney and review, even if they have consulted an attorney like years ago, maybe there's something that has changed, maybe their facts, immigration law is very fact specific. If there is something that occurred to you, let's say, last year you were a victim of a crime, you may be eligible for some new relief. So it's very important for them to, schedule a screening with an attorney and review the possible options, and even options if you are arrested, because there are several immigration relief options that are only available if you are in deportation proceedings, and people don't know that. They think, oh, if I'm arrested by ICE, then I will just sign voluntary departure and I'll self-deport. That's what some people think. But there are several immigration options that are available only if you are in removal proceedings. You cannot apply affirmatively for it. So if you go through a screening and you are aware that, oh, even if I'm arrested, worst case scenario, if I'm arrested, put in deportation proceedings, I can actually apply for cancellation of removal. And that will give me a pathway to get legal permanent residence, and to become a U.S. citizen as well. So it's very important to have this screening, and of course beware of immigration fraud. We are in our region. We have a lot of immigration consultants here, so avoid scams and fraud. And make sure that you are consulting with a reputable immigration attorney and organization. And summary, know your rights again. Remain silent, stay calm, don't open the door, don't sign anything, and speak with an attorney, make a family plan, and stay informed. And I think one more thing that I want to always tell the community is that let's and let's help in not spreading false information. Because sometimes some people have a tendency, they have seen something from the social media, they tend to like just post it also, even if it's not verified. So in these times, when it's important that we only share information that we verify, especially with the fear in our communities, it's important not to even heighten the fear if it's not verified, right? So if it's an information that is not verified, let's not share it. If if it's verified coming from, let's say for example, you witness from, you've seen it that there is a raid in your area, then you can share it if you've seen it yourself. But if you only seen it through an online, social media post, don't share it, all right? And I think that's it. Thank you so much. If you have a question, I'm willing to answer.
That was nonstop information. Is this on?
Yeah, I know it's like information overload, but
Wow, thank you so much. Selena Gutierrez is going to talk about her experience in being in a separated family due to deportation. She's currently an advocate and representative in various organizations that represent Latino communities and other minorities as a DACA recipient and living firsthand with the impact of family separation due to deportation. Selena has been a passionate voice for protection of Friendship Park and other issues revolving around immigration. So is this working? Oh. Is this working? Oh, yeah, sorry. Okay, so she's very active in Latino communities. She's a DACA recipient, and due to deportation, her family's been separated. So she's the voice for protection of Friendship Park and other issues revolving around immigration. But Selena, if you could tell us about your deported member of your family or whatever, and what's that like? How long has it lasted? What are your hopes of getting back together? That'd be great. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. I know that this is an issue that's been very, very important, and I really appreciate that you guys are doing this for the community. I feel that it's important not only for the community I represent, but even those who are affected by it for some way or some form. You know somebody, as Latinos, we know somebody who knows somebody. So thank you for having me. So back in 2018, around 2019, I received a call from the White House and asking me about DACA and what that meant and what it had done for me. And I remember that along the questions of the interview, they asked me, what is your first memory when you came into the United States? And at the moment, I was 5 when I came to the United States. And at that moment, all I could think of, I answered some silly thing like getting new shoes. I think that's all I could answer at that moment. But as soon as I was done with that call and that interview from the White House, I mean, it's the White House calling you, right? Yeah, I was a bit nervous. But as I hung up, I started thinking about my first memory. And I remember that there was a 5-year-old hiding behind a bush in front of her house because I had seen a green van. And I'm not gonna out myself out with as far as my age, but it was a pistachio green van. And all I knew, and it had the seal, and all I knew was that if you look at green is bad. And it was probably like a police officer corner van or something, now that I think about it back. But I think about the fear that I felt at that moment, thinking about being separated from my family, thinking about my parents being separated from me. And now in 2009, moving fast forward, I live my childhood nightmare. when I get a call from my father telling me that ICE had just come to my house and they had taken my mom and sister. When I received that call, I was trying to, like the attorney said, stay calm. But in reality, I kind of chuckled internally because it's probably the last thing you really could be, calm. And I remember trying not to go into panic at that time. And I'm trying not to go into an anxiety attack because I just realized that that very thing that as a child I feared for, it was my reality right now at this moment. And so at that time, all I could think was, I'm like, I have to remain here. I don't know anything else. All I know and I thought was all the advice that I had heard throughout the years around my community of trying to stay here, trying to stay safe, trying to hide. And I remember that I thought to myself, I have to stay here because I have to stay with my father now because my mom and my sister were just taken away. And you see, my father and my mother, they had been business owners for over 16 years at this time when my mom and my sister were taken away. And as I see my family collapsing at that very moment, I thought, where is my sister? Where is my mother now? And you see, I had volunteered before at a prison for different reasons, so I kind of knew what that looked like. And I was very afraid that that place that I had seen, it was the very place where now my mother and my sister were. And then I thought to myself, is my brother's family okay? We're kind of in the same boat. And I started thinking, what is going on? What is going on? And you know, until now, it has been the darkest and it has been the hardest thing that I've ever had to endure. And it hasn't been easy because at that time, I remember that by noon, I get a call from a family member telling me, your mom and your sister are already in Mexico. So all hope that I could have to have a proceeding before a judge, the very thing that they tell you not to do, to sign, I just realized that none of that mattered at that moment because in that moment, it was just so stressful, so full of anxiety, and I knew that they had done the very thing that for years we had heard not to do. And so I get a call, and now that I know that, I'm thinking, what is gonna happen to me? What am I gonna do moving forward? And I thought about losing all the moments that my mom and I would have. My mom and I were very united, you know, as a Latino family. You know, we hate that we're on top of each other, but we needed each other on top of each other, you know. And my sister hang out with her, and we were such a close-knit family. As growing up as family owners, you know, we worked there every summer. We were there every weekend. So, you know, we were very, very close-knit. And so I started longing, as time proceeded, longing for the family gatherings, the holidays together, missing a hug from mom, those outings with my sister. And you might be thinking, how did this happen to you, your family, with so many years here? How could this have happened to you? Well, let me tell you. The first thing was financially, we couldn't really afford an attorney that could counsel us well. And so what you do is you kind of go to different spots where they tell you to go because it went well for them, and so you're kind of all over the place. Second, it was the lack of information that we had, of opportunities that we could have had to get our status changed. And third, it was a fraud. We ended up in a notario. So it's very true what's out there. We ended up in a notario. We ended up in fraud that, of course, led to thousands of dollars lost, led to, they had us from court to court, but, you know, he wouldn't go in. So that was a whole mess of itself. And fourth, when we ended up with an actual lawyer, he gave us the wrong advice. So he changed the whole case into a different proceeding, and guess what? that left us out, left most of my family out, and only my father could proceed. So that's how we ended up in this mess. Deportation not only affected my family, it affected my education. I had to drop out because, as you can imagine, the fear that I was going through, the only thing I went into was survival. And that's the only thing that I really could do. I was afraid that on my way out to go to school, even at the school campus, that I wouldn't be protected and that I would be taken away. So I dropped out from school. I had to drop out. I couldn't work. And it was detrimental in every form because of the trauma that it had caused. So shortly after, my family's business had to be sold to try to salvage what remained of many years of hard work. And every day I was living in an anxiety of being deported and in the fear for my family's safety. There was a spike of violence in Mexico around that time. And I wasn't sure if I might now hear the news that they would have been victims of violence now. So I had not only had to fear for my stay, but I also had to fear for my family's safety. And it wasn't until I became a DACA recipient, and DACA is a Deferred Action for Childhood Arrival, that I was able to go to a famous little park, my national park called Friendship Park. And I was able to see my family for the first time in years, with tears and with fear at the same time, because the park is patrolled by Border Patrol. I was able to see my family again. And even though it was behind some gates, even though we could only pinky touch, I was still not behind a screen with those conversations that I had. I feel in some sort of way closer and connected. You know, it's taken me many years to heal from the trauma of this event. And to be honest with you, I'm still healing. And I still continue to be separated from my sister. My mom was able to return, but now my sister, because of that broken system, and she still hasn't been able to return. When I think about the events that I am missing in my sister's life, I continue to face the effects of deportation and what it has caused to my family. I feel the fear of that little girl being afraid of being separated from her family. I feel the trauma and the anxiety of that August 9th of 2009. Minors get separated daily, elderly people, vulnerable communities. And you know, one thing that I can say is my faith and my community that has surrounded me, they have helped me to continue to heal and stand. And I am blessed enough to have that community. I am blessed enough to be covered with great people around me. But not everyone is. Not everybody is able to heal. Not everybody is able to overcome. Not everybody is able to stand again after the trauma that you go through from being separated, from the grotesque way that you get separated from your family. I'm able to recoup. I was speaking to a friend this week, actually, and she told me, but life doesn't end. And I told her, but it feels like it ends. She told me, you know, you don't lose everything. And I told her, but you feel like you lose everything in that moment. When the very core of who you are, your family, it's taken away. And you don't know, again, when you might see them again. I want to finish up with this in the words of Mary Oliver, the poet. I tell you this to break your heart, by which I mean that it only breaks open to never close again to the world. Thank you for letting me share my story with you guys today.
Do you want to show the video or?
I think we'll go down after the Q&A. I just wrote your notes.
When do you want to stop?
I think we should tell them that we started late and if they want to stay and watch the video.
Okay, we're gonna do Q&A while Ian and Selena are here. Most of these, I think, are addressed to you. Does ICE need to provide ID when approaching someone?
Could you repeat the question?
Does ICE need to provide ID when approaching someone? Is that right?
Actually, no, they don't have to. You know, they have their badges on, and that's the way to identify them, right? They are not required to show you their ID, but you can ask their names. You know, you can insist to get their names, but usually their uniforms, they have their last names there. So if you are documenting an incident, it's very important to, you know, write those information. How many officers? What are the names of the officers? What are the color of the uniforms and everything, right?
Can you
if-
video?
Yeah, if you are able to do a video recording, as I've said earlier, as long as you're not interfering with their work, you have a right to record, you know, those incidents in that are, you know, that are happening in public spaces. Yes.
Thanks. The Episcopal Diocese of San Diego does not allow ICE to enter its churches. What is the policy of other denominations?
Well, I am not sure what the policy of other denominations are, but I think most of the churches have a policy, even universities and schools. I've heard several schools make that kind of a declaration of their policy not to allow ICE and immigration enforcement inside their facilities. Of course, again, as I've said earlier, the only exception there if they have a warrant to enter or search, right? But otherwise, I think many of those institutions would not allow ICE to do enforcement action inside their facilities.
Can agents arrest people in court buildings?
Yeah, so that's actually under under this administration. I think that's impossible. There's nothing impossible under this administration, right? I mean, if you think that they already went the lowest, the next day they will do something even lower. But anyway, it's possible if, that they are able to do enforcement action, especially not inside the courthouse, because as long as they don't interfere with the proceedings in a courthouse, technically, you know, in theory, they can.
But in a courtroom, you mean?
But in the courtroom, no.
Yeah, but
In a courtroom, no.
if
They,
you're walking in the hall?
yeah, not in a courtroom, because if you are in a courtroom in a proceeding, they can't, you know, arrest you, right, in the middle of the proceeding. They will have to, you know, wait for you either in the hallway or outside. Technically, they can do that. But as of now, I don't hear that happening. But then again, it's only 2 months in.
We just heard about a school in Aurora, Colorado, where the agents hid in the bushes, and when people came out of the school, they arrested them.
Yes, that's possible.
What is to keep agents from taking documents and not returning them?
Well, you have a right to have those documents back. Usually, if you are arrested, then ICE officers have a right to, you know, confiscate all the belongings that you have. If you are going to be detained, if you're arrested and detained, they will put all your documents, your wallet, money, IDs, and everything in a, you know, and you will have to turn it over. But you have a right to have those back.
So under California law, which crimes can local sheriffs or police turn over undocumented people to ICE or CBP without a warrant?
I'm not particularly, I don't have it on the top of my mind, the specific laws, but under SB 54, okay, if there is we have a local policy, we have a state law, the SB 54, and we also have a local policy by the San Diego County. So in that case, okay, the only way for ICE to transfer somebody, for local law enforcement to transfer somebody to ICE without a warrant is, some of those several few crimes. But again, I don't have the actual PC, numbers with me.
Yeah, the San Diego sheriff says there are some crimes where we don't want people loose. And so she
Yeah, but
turns them over to ICE.
yeah, but even then, the exception is very, very, just a few offenses. Even those violent offenses, like for example, like sexual assault. They will have to, if they want to arrest the person, they have several ways to do it, right? So one is to get a warrant. That's one. But in addition to that, they have other options. Like I have seen that they have been doing this in many ways. They arrest them after release. They arrest them in their house or in their home, or they simply monitor where the person is going to be released, and they arrest them. The studies show, though, what is important to note here is that in many jurisdictions where there is sanctuary policies in place, it did not result to a spike in crime. That's number one. It did not result to the non-deportation of violent criminals. Because most of the time, ICE will find a way to arrest a person when it involves, crimes of violence. Okay, so the reason that I'm explaining this because many opponents of sanctuary laws always cites to this, like we are helping criminals get away, which is not true. Because the very purpose of sanctuary policies, as we all know, is that we want to make sure that our community members trust our local police. Because the moment our community members know that our local police and ICE are actually helping each other, that trust between the community and the police diminishes and results to even deeper problem. Now, if there's a crime in a neighborhood, if I have family members who are undocumented, I may not want to report the crime because I don't want my family member later on to be arrested. Or if I am undocumented and I witness a crime, I may not want to report the crime to local police if I know that the local police and ICE is actually helping each other, right? So there are, those violent crimes like committed by undocumented individuals are very, very, small in terms of, the total number of crimes. And we believe that it's the impact of ICE and local police cooperating, or even the county cooperating with ICE, have a deeper harm to our community, than not having those policies. Okay.
So if ICE comes to a home and with a correct court-approved document, can witnesses intervene and, for instance, give the agent a red card?
Yeah. So even if ICE has a valid warrant and enters your house, so they can search your house because that is the subject of the warrant, right? But you can still invoke your right to remain silent. You still don't, you have the right not to tell them, where you're from or what your country of origin is, right? You can still invoke the right, but of course the search part, because they have a warrant, they are able to do, the search validly, okay, legally.
Okay, TPS is temporary protective status. There are hundreds of thousands of people here from certain countries who have that status, and it expires in a year and a half, 2 years after they come. So those are going to expire, and Trump says he's not renewing them. So they're going to be
Yeah.
thousands of people.
Correct.
What's going to happen to them?
So yeah, so that's precisely what's going to happen, right? We already know that because the Trump administration has declared that they will end the TPS for many people, especially those from Haiti and from other countries. So once the TPS program is ended, it means those people are become undocumented. Many of them will end up going back to court for immigration proceedings. So like, for example, I have a lot of Haitian clients who are in deportation proceedings. Before, I was able to terminate the cases because they are eligible for TPS. So there's no more deportation proceedings. If TPS is ended, then ICE has the option to put them back in deportation proceedings. They can still apply for asylum in court. They can still apply for other kinds of relief in immigration court, right? If they're able to win, or if the judge is able to grant that relief, then they can't be deported, right? However, of course, there's that risk. If the judge doesn't grant that relief, then they will be deported. And it's very unfortunate, especially in Haiti, right? We know that until now, there is really no functioning government in Haiti. We know that even the US Embassy in Haiti is having a hard time because of the violence around Haiti. And yet, our government is threatening many Haitians to be returned to their country. So it's a very cruel kind of policy. But we hope that we will be able to defend many of Haitians from being deported. But again, what I'm hoping for, the process takes time. Trump only has 4 years, okay? The immigration proceedings can take a year or two. I can file an appeal with the Board of Appeals, that's another 1 year or two. Even if I lose at the Board of Appeals, I can still make another appeal to the Ninth Circuit, it's another year or two. I'm just hoping that, there's a new administration that will have some sense of, decency or humanity to prevent this kind of cruelty to fellow human beings. So, if Trump hopefully is not able to extend his term, again, although he's not able to technically, but we don't know, with what's happening in the country. But, that's, as an attorney, that would be my strategy to keep people from being deported.
People who have pending asylum cases, are they deportable?
No. So if you have a pending application for relief, asylum, VAWA, or victims of trafficking, T visa, most of the time, if you have a pending asylum application, they can't deport you. Okay. But there are some, like U visa, for example. If you have a pending application for U visa, this is for victims of crime. If you are a victim of crime, for example, let's say aggravated assault. If you're a victim of crime and you report to law enforcement, then we could apply for U visa for you. But because U visa is something that could be processed even if you're outside the country, so technically ICE could still deport you if you are waiting for your U visa approval. If you have already an approved U visa, then of course you can't be deported. But if you have just a pending U visa application, in theory they can deport you. But But for asylum, for T visa, for victims of domestic violence, if you have those pending either in court or with USCIS, you can't be deported.
What about international law? Does that protect people in the United States?
Well, supposedly, I mean, you know, international law is more of a soft law. You know, we are a signatory to many of these international instruments. For example, the asylum law, we have it in our rule, we have it in our laws, and it's also part of international law. We are also part of the Convention Against Torture. We are also part of different rules that prohibits a country from deporting somebody to a country that will result to the person's persecution or death, right? So we use it all the time in immigration court, international law, but it's going to be persuasive, but it's not something that you know, could stop a deportation once, you know, a judge makes a finding that your client does not deserve or is not eligible for some form of relief.
Are there economic benefits to the receiving country to have immigrants?
I mean, I'm not an economics expert, but you know, just by seeing, I think, the impact of immigrants in our country, I think it depends on the different factors in every country, right? But at least talking about, you know, the U.S. and Europe, for example, where, you know, the expertise of immigrants and the business that immigrants open, I think it overall, you know, there is documentation that shows, you know, the contribution of immigrants in the economy and the development of a country, you know, is well settled.
But the U.S. population has stopped growing, so the only way that our country's going to grow is with having immigrants. Okay, do governments actually make agreements about how many undocumented immigrants to allow in their countries?
Can you repeat the question?
Do governments actually make agreements about how many undocumented immigrants to allow in their countries?
Are we talking about our country or?
Or any country. You know about every country, don't you?
No. Every country have different rules as to immigration, right? So.
Well, as we understood, so we're the question screeners. As we understood the question, there has been at least once now that a secondary country has accepted immigrants from the accepted people who have been deported from the U.S. and they are not people who are from those countries. So the question is really regarding those agreements.
The agreements.
Yeah, so there is that agreement. One thing that we know recently is the one with Panama, right? That Panama received deportees from, you know, Asia, from other countries. There exists a kind of agreement, but, you know, our stand is that that is a violation of our laws. It's a violation of international law. You know, you cannot simply deport somebody to like any country that you want. You know, you cannot just deport a person to any location. And this is actually happening, going to happen more because, you know, I have clients calling me who I already won relief for them, yet they are going to be deported to a country that they don't know. So, you know, that's another headache that I'm trying to figure out right now on what to do next. But there is indeed, you know, this current administration is trying to enter into different agreements with other countries using different tools for other countries to receive deportees from the U.S. You know, either some of the Trump administration's tools include, like, you know, threats, economic threats, right? And just like what he's doing in Panama, that he's sort of declaring that maybe Panama could be taken over, the Panama Canal could be taken over by the U.S. So many of those things are being done by this current administration. So it's possible that they are able to enter into those agreements, but again, we believe it's a violation of international law.
Okay, this was about Social Security. Do immigrants, undocumented immigrants who work, do they pay Social Security? Does Social Security benefit from that? Do the workers get benefits back from Social Security?
Okay, so the answer to that is many undocumented, a big part of the undocumented population actually pays Social Security, yet they're not able to access that because they don't have any documentation. So, like for example, many of the undocumented population here were here initially legally through work visa or student visa, and then later on overstayed, right? So they have a valid Social Security number. And even if they work illegally, they are not authorized to work, they continue to file their taxes using that Social Security. So they could contribute, many contribute to Social Security, and even those without Social Security, they get an ITIN, a tax identification number, and they use that to file their taxes. And and they even the employers use that to deduct Social Security payments. So they pay taxes and pay Social Security, but they don't benefit from it. That's the irony of it.
Okay, last question. How can we educate or inform the general public about immigration and deportation processes, since the general public seems largely misguided, ignorant of the process?
Yeah, I think what your organization is doing here is very commendable, because this is precisely what our community needs, right? We want to multiply these kinds of events where we share information, we inform people of their rights, and we share to people on how they could help in this situation, and that how we could protect our communities, right? So yeah, so we need to do more, and we need to do more outreach to our communities to be able to spread this information, and hope that we will be able to survive this crisis, and that we will be able to soon have be able to advocate together for a more humane and orderly immigration process in the country.
Okay, thank you so much. This is
Thank you so much.
very good.